Well, it's really nice to meet you, Michelle, and we'd just love to hear about your story, really. At Ashford State Justice Network, we endeavour to, encourage and support and yeah, and grow opportunity for people who are living and working on estates. And sometimes that can be a tough place to be, but it can also be a place of absolute beauty and and extraordinary growth, actually. So I'd really like to ask you the question, where have you seen God at work over this last year or two, or maybe just recently?
Yeah, so our story of kind of the last, well, I guess it's a couple of years really, has been very much seeing God at work in a kind of, well, a way that we'd have never seen if it hadn't been for COVID. We used to run holiday clubs in a church hall. 25 kids was pretty much the max, and that was a great and glorious thing. And then COVID happened, so we wanted to do something. We knew that there were kids on the estate who were still wanting to engage. We'd see them kind of walking the streets, and the quick highs and buys. We still wanted to find a way to kind of connect with them. So we began delivering craft bags, which were full of everything that you would need to complete 5 crafts based around a kind of biblical theme. 2 years ago, as a way of keeping up the kind of relationships that we'd built. And so we'd walk the streets every school holiday. Started off with 50 bags. Holiday we've just delivered for, I think we're at about 170. And it gave us a chance to talk to people. At the same time, I was in my first year of curacy, which meant that I had the opportunity to finish an MA with a dissertation. And my noticing from delivering these bags was that people were kind of hesitant to know how to start a conversation about faith, but really wanted a conversation about faith. Often on the doorsteps, we'd get these amazing conversations going, and I just thought, I wonder how we continue those conversations. So I did a research project with the mums of the children who were receiving holiday club bags, all about signs and symbols, and they took a kind of Christian object like a candle or a rainbow or a cross, and they sat with it for a week. And then we had a conversation about it, themed around how they felt about it, what they thought a Christian would feel about it, and what their friends would feel about it. And that led to some amazing conversations and really highlighted for me how God is so at work in the lives of everyone. And that our kind of, our challenge as estate ministers is to find ways in which we can enable people to kind of discover and explore more about how God's at work in their lives in an appropriate way. So that was my exciting bit of research, which then...
Wow.
Yeah.
Michelle, that's amazing. And sounds really interesting. Not just, the bags, which, and I think that having conversations in this is, I've heard other people say that's what they did, and it was a real way to build a relationship. But that sounds like an incredible thing to ask people to do something and then talk about it. I mean, what do you find from that?
So, general findings from the research were that people had, I share a lovely story from the research that one lady, she really didn't want a holding cross. She spent the whole of the research saying that she really wasn't sure about the cross and it scared her and it was a worrying thing. And so it was in deepest, darkest COVID. So I posted the cross through her door, and then she had it for a week. And then when I rang her and we shared the phone call, she said that she'd just sat with the cross and all these questions had flooded into her mind and she just needed to know the answers. And the fact that I was doing the research gave a structure where she could ask those questions. And So that was a fascinating thing. So at the end of so after a year of Holiday Club bag delivery, we sat down and thought, okay, well, what have we noticed when we've been out and about delivering? And we noticed, number one, that actually there is a real thirst, I think, among the people who were engaging on the outreaches, on the real periphery of church activity, to know more, to have a space to ask questions, to have a space to engage with church and see what it's all about. We obviously noticed huge issues with food poverty for lots of people in lots of different ways. And the other kind of key takeaway from the conversations that we'd had was that there was a huge sense of kind of social isolation and what that had done to families. So families who had really found it hard, just that intensity of experience over the lockdowns. So we thought about what we might do in response to kind of those things, and something called Free Tea Friday was born. And Free Tea Friday was a gathering amongst us, and there are two large housing estates which neighbour each other. And the other housing estate has a very large church hall with a 5-star rated kitchen and a team who are great at all things kitchen. So we thought we'd like to find a way to feed people. We'd like to find a way for people to feel that they could gather safely and have that quality kind of family time that didn't feel so pressured. And we really wanted to find a way so that we could just talk to people, that we could sit round a table, round a meal, and let people have those conversations, let people discover and ask those questions. Okay, so where is God? Who is God? What's God doing? So we started Free Tea Friday last summer with a donation from a local political party. Who heard what we were thinking about doing. We ran it for the 6 weeks of the summer. It basically involved gathering families round tables, just basic crafts. Then we'd have just a really easy, simple meal. So it'd be pizzas and hot dogs and cookies and donuts and all that kind of stuff. And then we'd finish it with a family challenge, which was things like spaghetti and marshmallow towers. Those kinds of things. Design a wedding dress out of newspaper, all that stuff. And then we ran out of money at the end of the summer, and spent September feeling God nudging us in all sorts of ways to find a way to keep it going. And the miraculous happened, and people offered money to keep it going. Different businesses, local supermarkets, individuals made really generous donations and started us off again. So we thought that we would relaunch, but with the idea that we would make sure that each week we took, what did we take for a start? I think we took the Jesus I Am statements. So we made bread, and we just, so as people arrive, the first thing we do is we say, today we're thinking about Jesus saying that I am the bread of life, and what that might mean, and then we share a craft activity and work through there. It's been a wonderful chance to just meet people where they are, to serve them, to have those conversations, to talk a bit about faith, and where people are with it, what questions people have, just to be with people in the midst of all of the ups and downs of life and to be able to pray with them. That's been a real joy. And that's my very long answer to where God's been at work in our estates.
That is so encouraging. Just it's beautiful, because it's all about people, and it is about seeing God at work, you know, and as you've seen and listened and noticed, God's given you opportunity, and you've taken that, and that's just sounds incredible. Okay, so whereabouts are you, and do you have the other question is, do those two estates mingle with each other?
Yeah, great question. So we're in North Lincoln.
Right.
And yeah, the estates are on two halves of a kind of fairly decent road. Fascinatingly, I think historically, I'm a local girl, and the estates have, I'd say 20 years ago, there was a fair amount of animosity between them.
Right.
And we were quite aware of that. But what we've discovered is that actually that maybe isn't the case so much now. People move across the estates for schools. People move across the estates because their sister lives on the other estate. So you go across the road to visit your sister or your mum or your uncle or whoever. And there is a lot more, certainly among the young families, a lot more movement physically between them. And the geography doesn't mean that people feel, I think, quite so separate. And the other fascinating thing is that, and this is a kind of observation in connection with the local kind of police, that uphill Lincoln now seems to have more rivalry, particularly amongst the teenagers, with downhill Lincoln. So it's almost like the estates have joined forces in the last few years. And there seems to be more of a connection between postcodes rather than between individual estate identities, which I think are still distinct. But there's certainly among the young families, much more movement between them than maybe there would have been a few years ago.
Yeah, because that can be really challenging, can't it? If actually like we had a main road that sat between two bits of our estate, and that would, in the past that had been a real barrier. Not so much now, but and of course I would have rivalries there, but now the rivalries are further afield.
Yeah, absolutely that.
So we join together because we realise we're from the same space, really, in order to have rivalry with someone else. And before, when you did the summer 6 weeks, did you have Bible stories within that? Did you talk about did you talk about Jesus within that? Yeah.
So we usually would historically used the Scripture Union stuff, which had tended to form a kind of basis for what we were doing. So there was, I think the fascinating thing about it going into homes is that when we do a holiday club bag, we also do a video. And so so that it was very detached, so that children would be dropped off, they would have a day of kind of exploring these Scripture Union materials, and we'd send books home and things like that. But how much of that was actually shared at home is very different. Whereas the bags, we make sure that everything that's in the bag is everything you would need, so you don't have to have anything at all at home. You don't, if there's a pencil required, it goes in the bag. If there's stickiness required, glue dots are utilised. They're all over my desk permanently. There are always, so we've made it a real effort so that families don't have to, this isn't an extra challenging thing. This is a thing where you can watch the video together with your kids, you can put them on a tablet, whatever you're doing, and that it's now in your home. And that often parents take the photos of their kids when they've done the activities and send them in to celebrate them. And that's a hugely fascinating kind of aspect of it, that these wonderful families take the time to photograph their kids doing them, photograph the crafts that they've made, and then they send them to us, and then we celebrate it, and people are so proud. That's a really lovely thing I've noticed. When we put up pictures from Free Tea Friday, the comments that come underneath on social media are, "This is my lovely granddaughter, isn't she amazing?" You know, what a joyous thing as a church to be able to do, is to celebrate these unique and precious children of God. It just gets me.
And I guess you also are hearing the voice of children and young people in that. I endlessly, people say to me, I don't have many children in my church, or they're not behaving or whatever. but I often think, but when do you listen to them? You know, when do you hear, and it is their bad behaviour sometimes just about feeling they're not, you know, no one really notices them. And so, yeah, that's incredible, because it sounded like, you know, you have the opportunity to hear about their day and about their life. And, you know, I think that's so important, especially at this time. You know, lots of schools and churches have said that behaviour in children has been difficult since going back to school. And I think that that's, you know, that kind of general mental health is, they probably couldn't say that to you, but actually that kind of, there's stuff going on that they need to just tell you about. And that might just be, you know, telling you about their playing in the playground with their friends, but actually being heard. It's really important to be heard, isn't it?
It's been a huge thing for us to just, we said right at the outset, we need this to be a really welcoming, inclusive space. So we need what we're doing to mean that people can come, and if you're a parent who just needs some space and some time, that we can sit on a table and we can offer that, and we can offer someone to have a chat with your kids and to feed them and to give them a drink, and to do some crafts with them while you just have a minute. And in the same way that we provide a space where the kids who come feel like they've had a week at school and it's been relentless and there's been all sorts going on, and they've got a space where they can just be. We found some soft play equipment, and if they want to just lay on the soft play stuff, they can. And as long as they're keeping safe, we're pretty chilled out about exactly how they're interacting with the craft stuff and how they're interacting with the environment, because we figure it's just the space where we want them to know that they're loved, and that they're precious exactly as they are. And that's been a thing to negotiate. You know, how do we make sure that we keep everyone in this space safe? How do we address our kind of preconceptions about what children's behaviour should look like in a church space? And we try and challenge ourselves really regularly and think, actually, does this still look as inclusive as we want it to look? Is it still as welcoming as we want it to be? Are we still bringing people together in community in the way that we felt called to do? And they're the questions that I think keep us mindful of the needs of the people who are coming along, and we don't try to form it to be something that we think it needs to look like.
Yeah, beautiful. Oh. Wow. Can I ask another question? Just to go back, you said you were from that area. Did you choose to work there? Or was it a choice to work on an estate? And does knowing the area help?
So knowing the area, I think, well, it certainly helps in loads and loads of ways, and there's lovely relationships to be able to build on in the wider community as well. I knew the estate, lived minutes away from it growing up, and so it kind of happened all by accident, really. When I was discerning vocation, there was a suggestion that I should go and get some experience in other churches. So I wound up at St Giles for a placement, which somehow turned into a contextual placement. So while I trained half-time at college, half-time there, which turned into a curacy. Because it just felt the whole way through like the place where God wanted me to be for this time. It's been a privilege, every moment of it, every conversation on a doorstep, every bit of feeling part of that community has just, it's been really, really special. And I'm coming to the end of curacy and I'm feeling a bit emotional about it.
Do you know what next?
No. No. No, I've loved estates, and I've loved the chance in college. I got a chance to really focus on context, which was good, and I was so pleased to have the chance to finish the kind of research in an estate context, really looking into it. at that kind of, on a really practical level, but on a level that enabled me to see a huge amount. Well, the research for the whole was a whole new thing, but not only did it help me to understand and explore and be with people on estates, but it helped me to understand a lot about me as a minister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel after 16 years on the estate, I learned more than I ever gave.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think you'll look for a estate parish again?
If someone said, oh, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. I feel really blessed by having had the opportunity to be part of an estate community. It's been such a privilege. And if that opportunity came up at any point in the future of ministry, I'd grasp it and cherish it. Yeah.
Hooray. Oh, may they find you. I think what an enormous blessing you would be. It's just, thank you so much for sharing. It's so encouraging because and I think we need encouraging right now. That, you know, that you've been open to hear God's call.
Yeah.
To join in with his mission, which is already there.
Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah. But you get to reap the benefits of seeing it, which is just lovely. I just want to thank you for what you're doing, for the lives you'll have touched, for those children and young people who get to be heard. It's a special place, and those people will hold you in their hearts for a long time. And I them. Yeah, exactly. And wherever you go to next, I know you'll be a blessing there. And I just thank God for people like you who, you know, hear that call and take it. It is a privilege. And yeah, and may it bless you and your family.
Thank you.